Along with the supernatural genre, vampires are the second most storied horror genre there is. We have seen thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of vampire movies since the dawn of film, with over 200 portrayals of Dracula alone. Here, I bring you my top 5 greatest vampire movies, in my opinion. John Carpenter's Vampires, released in 1998. Directed by the legendary John Carpenter, the man who gave us Halloween, Escape from New York, and The Thing. The movie stars James Woods as Jack Crow, a Vatican-funded vampire slayer, who along with his team track and take out nests, the term for vampire hideouts. After a clear out of a nest containing 9 vampires, Crow and his team party at a local motel, even though Crow is upset that he didn't find the master vampire of this nest. Unbeknown to Crow and his team, Valak, the lead master vampire, has risen outside the nest they just cleared and attacks them at the party. Crow and Montana are the only survivors from the slaughter, along with a prostitute named Katrina, who has already been bitten by Valak. In a meeting with his Vatican contact, Crow lets him know that Valak used his name and wants to know how he knows him. Crow is lumbered with a green-skinned priest, Father Adam Guato. They now have to go on a quest to find a black cross, which can be used by Valak, which will make all vampires able to walk in sunlight. Crow, Montoya, and Guato have their work cut out for them when Katrina, who has a link with Valak, leads them to him. Valak already with the cross, and Crow wants to know why Valak hasn't killed him yet. A ceremony begins, and Crow's Vatican contact appears. Here we find out that Crow is needed for the ceremony as a ritual sacrifice, as a vampire slayer is needed. Katrina, who has now turned fully into a vampire, has bitten Montoya, who arrives and saves Crow from the sacrifice. A huge fight breaks out, where Montoya and Guato kill the vampires while Crow fights Valak. Picking up the cross during the fight, Valak leaps at Crow and is impaled on the cross. After we see that Valak has now been destroyed, Crow lets Montoya and Katrina leave and drive off into the sunset as Crow and Guita clear the vampire dead bodies. This movie had a lot of issues with the MPAA, mostly over the gore used and the over-the-top violence, to which it was threatened with an NC-17, which would not have the movie shown in most theatres in the United States. The frames that were cut were mostly in the motel massacre scene. Fun fact, Bruce Campbell was Carpenter's first choice to play Montoya, which went to Daniel Baldwin, only after his brother, Alec Baldwin, signed on and then turned it over to his brother. It sure would have been great to see Bruce Campbell in a John Carpenter flick. Daybreakers, 2009. Written and directed by the Spiegg brothers, who gave us the awesome cult zombie movie Undead, stars Ethan Hawke and William Dafoe. It tells the story of the year 2019, where a plague has transformed nearly all human beings into vampires. The daytime world shows it to be an empty void. As we go from day to night, we see that nightlife is brimming and alive. The vampire world is here. Blood is running out for the vampires. We meet Ethan Hawke's character, Edward Dalton, whose job it is to harvest human blood in a lab. We see humans chained up and slowly being drained of their blood. On his way home, Edward has a car crash and sees the car has humans in it. He hides them from the police as Audrey, one of the humans, notices Edward's ID badge. The next day, Audrey turns up at Edward's house and takes him to a secret meeting. Here we meet Cormac, played by the always delightful William Dafoe. Dafoe tells Edward that he used to be a vampire, but he had an accident due to being exposed to sunlight for a certain amount of time and then fell into the water. Edward vows to help Cormac create this new cure. That night, Edward, Audrey and Cormac recreate the event that turned him human on Edward. Edward reverts back to being a human. Now with a known cure, Edward makes his way back to his building. Edward makes his way back to the laboratory, but on his way he stops at his partner's home and tells him of the cure. His partner calls the police to have them as he isn't interested in the cure. Audrey is captured, but Edward and Cormac escape, running into Edward's brother Frankie, who bites Cormac. Instead of turning Cormac into a vampire, Frankie, Edward's brother, turns human, as it shows that Cormac's blood is the cure and not the sunlight. To save Audrey, Edward hands himself into his boss, Charles. Edward taunts Charles into biting him, which he does, but as Edward is now human and his blood is exactly the same as Cormac's, Charles turns human. Edward, Cormac and Audrey escape and drive into the future, not knowing what the human race will have for them. Fun fact, here in the UK this movie was cut by the BBFC for its cinema release. Cuts were done to gory violence at the climax. For its DVD Blu-ray release, all cuts were waived and the rating was upped to suitable for only 18 years and older. Bram Stoker's Dracula, 1992. Directed by the man who brought us the Godfather trilogy and Apocalypse Now, Francis Ford Coppola brings us the ultimate take on the horror classic that defines an entire genre. We all know the story of Dracula, here played by Gary Oldman in one of his most iconic roles. In 1462, after renouncing God and his church after a very bloody battle, Dracula drinks the blood from the cross after stabbing it. He declares that he will rise from the grave to revenge his love of his life Elizabetha's death with the powers of darkness. Now, in 1897, we follow Dracula after he goes to London after buying a property and he finds that his long dead love of his life is now in the shape of Mina, played by the brilliant Winona Ryder. Mina's fiancé, played by Keanu Reeves, who puts on a very laughable English accent, is stuck at the Count's castle in Transylvania and is trying to make his escape. His escape cannot happen as Dracula's three brides drain him of his blood. Back in London, a thunderstorm is breaking spirits. It is during this that Dracula hypnotizes Lucy, Mina's friend and who she is staying with while Jonathan is in the Count's castle. She is seduced by Dracula in his wolf-like form and is bitten. Over the next few days, Lucy starts to change. Due to this, Abraham Van Helsing, played by the always spectacular Anthony Hopkins, appears and tells them that she was bitten by a vampire and she will become one soon. Dracula, now in his young, handsome form, walks the streets of London. He walks into Mina during the streets and he charms her. Dracula then visits Mina and tells her who she is. Mina, she gets confused and angry, but admits that she does remember her past life as Elizabetha and asks him to transform her into a vampire. Mina hears from Jonathan, who has escaped from the castle and is resting at a convent. Mina packs up her things and travels to Romania, where she meets Jonathan and they get married. On hearing that this has happened, Dracula becomes more vengeful. He turns Lucy into what she desires and watches as Van Helsing and the others kill her undead body. On returning to London, Jonathan tells Helsing and the others where the Count has his homes, and that they must destroy the crates of soil that the Count brought with him from his castle, all brought over by gypsies. As they destroy the crates, Dracula enters Fairfax Abbey and kills Renfield. Renfield used to work for him, but he came back insane, and he kills him for warning Mina and the others of his presence. Van Helsing and the others burst in and Dracula claims Mina to be his. After turning into a big pile of rats, Dracula escapes. Van Helsing learns from Mina that the Count is going back to his castle. Helsing and Mina arrive at the castle just before the Count arrives. Helsing and Mina are attacked by the three brides, where Mina, she does not resent to them, but after a while Helsing circles them in fire, keeping the brides away. At sunrise, Helsing goes into the tomb and kills the three brides. Dracula arrives, closely followed by Jonathan and the others. A small fight breaks out between the gypsy carriers and Jonathan Harker and the others, ending with Dracula leaving his casket when the sun sets. Jonathan slits his throat and Morris slams a Bowie knife into his heart. Dracula staggers, but Mina jumps to his defense when they are about to kill him. Mina and Dracula go into the chapel, where his beloved died at the start, and he asks Mina for peace. She rams a knife into his heart and watches as he ascends to the afterlife with his love, Elizabeta. Fun fact, the special effects in this movie were done by Francis Ford Coppola's son, after he told his father he can achieve them what he wanted. This is only after Francis Ford Coppola was told by the special effects company what he wanted was impossible. Also, extra fun fact, Michael Keaton was considered before Gary Oldman to play Dracula, which would have marked his second time playing a creature associated with bats. Blade 2, 2002. Directed by the modern-day monster maker Guillermo del Toro, with Wesley Snipes returning as Blade. We see that he's still on the hunt for Whistler, played by Chris Christopherson, in Prague. He finds him after a lengthy battle with a couple of vampires who has Whistler in a vat of blood. They return to the hideout, where Blade gives him an antivirus serum, to which he hopes it will work on him. If it doesn't, he tells Whistler he knows what will come next. Here we meet Scud, played delightfully by Norman Reedus, who is now helping Blade with his vampire hunt, after Blade saved him from becoming a vampire victim. Two members of a vampire hunting pact break in and confront Blade, only for Blade to get the upper hand on them. They remove their masks and we meet Nisa and Assad, played by Danny John Jules of Red Dwarf fame. They ask Blade to go with them for a meeting with Lord Eli Damascanos, who is Nisa's father. Blade finds out that there is a new breed of vampire called Reapers. They feed on humans and vampires. They want Blade to help the vampires to hunt the Reapers down and wipe them out. We then meet the vampire hit team called the Blood Pact. The team consists of Reinhardt, played by Ron Perlman, Chupa, Snowman, Verlaine, Lighthammer, and Priest. They investigate a club called the House of Pain, which shows the Reapers are below it, and they ascend to the club for a feeding frenzy. During the battle, Blade meets Nomak, the head Reaper, and Reaper asks Blade why are they fighting as they both hate vampires. After a short fight, Blade goes back to the club and sees that Priest, he has been bitten by one of the Reapers. Blade kills him. They find a Reaper down in the sewer opening and take him back to the hideout, where they dissect him after he has died of bloodlust. They see the structure of the body and that a solid piece of bone protects the top of the heart, but the sides of the heart are open. They go into the sewers at dawn to hunt the rest of the Reapers. After a firefight and a UV bomb that kills most of the Reapers, Reinhardt is ordered to capture Blade, while the team electrocute and shock Blade into oblivion. Now comes one of the best third acts in action horror movie history. Damascanos reveals that he created the Reaper virus and tested it on his own son, Nomak, but it was a failed experiment, so he cast him aside. Scud shows himself to be a familiar, a vampire errand boy, if you will. Blade knew this and detonates a small explosive device that Scud is holding. Blade is then taken away to be dissected. Nisa confronts her father, who tells her he is willing to sacrifice even his own children for the vampire race. Blade escapes and Whistler takes him to a huge blood pool, which he falls into. We now come to a martial arts extravaganza, with Blade killing men left, right and centre before he gets to Reinhardt and kills him with one swipe of his sword. Nisa seals her and her father in his room as Nomak arrives. Nomak kills his father and bites Nisa after she tells him that he can do it. Blade arrives and sees Nisa on the floor. The pair fight to the death, with Blade stabbing Nomak in the heart under his armpit and upper side of his body. We end in London, where a vampire who Blade let off at the start of the movie is hiding out in an adult-only cinema. He goes into a room, turns the mirror on, and Blade is standing there. Fun fact, the last scene is very similar to a scene in the film The Crow, City of Angels, where the Crow does exactly the same to one of his enemies. This scene was included without scrutiny, as David S. Goyer, the writer of the Blade trilogy, also wrote the Crow, City of Angels screenplay. From Dusk Till Dawn, 1996. Directed by the upcoming at the time Robert Rodriguez, with a script by the ultra-cool Quentin Tarantino, comes the story of two bank-robbing brothers on the run to Mexico. George Clooney and Tarantino himself play the brothers Seth and Richard. They kill a sheriff and a store clerk and make their way to a motel where they need to find a new ride to Mexico as the entire nation is looking for them. At the motel, we find out that Richie's Tarantino's character is a vile and disgusting person, to which we cannot say what he is due to the YouTube's banned words. Seth, George Clooney's character, is the more sensible brother and level-headed one. He comes back to see that Richie has killed the hostage they had. In the restaurant, we now meet our other three main characters, Jacob and his children, Scott and Kate. Jacob is played by the always great Harvey Keitel, Scott by Ernest Liu, and Kate by the always brilliant Juliette Lewis. Richie and Seth grab them in their RV and head towards the border of Mexico, where they are searched by guards on the border. Now in Mexico, they make their way to the bar where Seth and Richie are expecting to stay the night and meet their contact in the morning, who is going to take them to El Rey. The name of the bar? The Titty Twister, a strip club in the middle of nowhere visited by bikers and truckers. During the evening, they see a show starring the beautiful Santinko Pandemonium, played by the woman who never ages, Salma Hayek. At the end of her show, a fight breaks out, to which we find out the entire bar staff are vampires. Richie is bitten by Salma Hayek's character and is killed by Seth after he turns. The fight leaves only a few people alive: Seth, Jacob, Scott, Kate, and two others. A biker named Sex Machine, played by makeup effects legend Tom Savini, and Frost, played by the always towering Fred Williamson. Sex Machine turns and bites Frost, who throws Sex Machine through a boarded-up window, which gives access to the hundreds of bats swarming outside, trying to get in. Jacob is bitten and tossed behind the bar, while Seth, Scott, and Kate retreat into a storage room, where Jacob makes his way to after. They make weapons out of all the items the vampires have stolen over the years and prepare for one last fight to the death. The vampires in this film are hideous and vile, not like the sparkling vampires you see in Twilight. The end battle is gruesome, full of blood, and just awesome for any vampire horror fan. Jacob turns and bites Scott, who kills Jacob. Kate sees Scott being fed on by a group of vampires and he tells her to kill him, which she does. Seth and Kate are the only ones left when all of a sudden a knock on the door by Seth's contact. They blast open the door and sunlight hits the globe, spinning round and killing all the vampires. Seth leaves Kate with a pile of cash and tells her to go away. The ending shot of the film shows the bar is built on an ancient Aztec temple. Fun facts: green blood was used for the vampire blood, as the movie would have been hit with a huge list from the censors to cut frames out. However, the movie was hit by the censors anyway when submitted asking for cuts to the dinner is served scene. Work print footage available on the DVD and Blu-ray shows these cuts in their full glory. The story was conceived by Robert Kurtzman of KNB Effects, which the team worked on this movie as the makeup artists and special effects technicians. Thank you for watching the top 5 vampires, in my opinion. If you are new to the channel, please like and subscribe, hit that notification bell, and I'll see you all in the next top 5.